What's up, y'all? It's Dr. Paul with Liberty Hill Comics, where I share my passion and over 40 years of experience comic book collecting, investing, and conservation with you. Today I'm going to start a new conservation project on this copy of Avengers #1. Yes, this is the book. The first appearance of the Avengers from November 1963, the height of the Marvel Age, and a really great example of Stan Lee and Jack Kirby at their best. For many collectors, this is a Grail comic, and one that many only dream of owning. This copy belongs to a friend of the channel, and we're going to conserve this book for the owner, and I'm going to show you all of the steps of the conservation process right here on Liberty Hill Comics. So follow along so you don't miss a thing. Before we jump into this project, I want to remind you that in appreciation of subscribers new and old, I'm currently running a free subscriber giveaway. All you need to do for a chance to win this awesome slabbed first appearance of Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., is be subscribed to the channel, follow the link over to that video, and leave a comment there. Good luck. If you are interested in comic book conservation, I recommend you check out our Facebook group, the Comic Book Conservation Community, where you can post your own conservation projects, get feedback, ask questions, get input on your conservation projects, and collaborate more directly with a growing group of skilled conservators. When we start a new conservation project, I always follow my 9-step comic book conservation process. As part of Step 1, preparation, we assess the comic book and eliminate steps we don't need to perform and consolidate any steps we can. If you are interested in working on your own comic book conservation projects, I recommend you check out that video for the overview. So to complete Step 1, preparation, the first thing we want to do is get a really good assessment of the book. Before I handle anybody's book, especially not my own, I make sure I have clean and dry hands. And this is as the book came to us in this Mylar. I've already removed the tape from the Mylar. When I'm dealing with other people's books, I typically will just remove the tape rather than try to be fancy and slide the book past the tape, which typically I'm comfortable doing with my own books. You can see the previous owner here had a backer board in the center fold of the book, and I think this is an acid-free backer board. But there's some ink transfer to the backer board, which is not super evident, but I think you'll see here. This is something that typically I see when you store a book with a backer board in the centerfold. I don't recommend it because that is ink loss, though I know some prominent dealers who swear by it. So this book overall presents pretty well. It's got some pretty obvious creases, spine ticks, and abrasions, but no major rip here on the cover, and the spine is solid. The staples are solid, and it's not a fragile book. When you look at the inside cover, you note that the biggest issues that will be addressable by us for this book are a number of water stains. You see tide marks really all over the inside. There's a small tear. This is some kind of a stain. See bad tide marks. You see some moderate tanning. It's worse along the bottom of the page where we have what I think is obviously cream-colored paper. It's a little more moderate along the top edge where it's more off-white. You see here, again, it's cream-colored on the first interior wrap on the bottom, but on the top, it's off-white. One of the things I like to do, because the first wrap will often be tanned worse than interior pages. Let me take a moment to just appreciate Jack Kirby's art. I will check the whiteness of the next page. Here we have some kind of a foreign substance, and I thought it might be physically on, but I think it's more of a stain. That's why you saw me give it a little brush there. Here's the second wrap. I think it is slightly darker than off-white on the bottom, but at the top it's off-white. I like to compare the whiteness between the first and the second wraps. So I'll do this little trick where I just bend the paper over. So along the top, they look pretty close. They both look off-white. If we look along the bottom, though, I think you can tell that the first wrap is darker than the second wrap along the bottom. And that just is part of my assessment. Whether or not it means we'll do anything to address it, we'll see. But it's something you can note. Typically, that first wrap, it's getting more exposure to oxygen and other contaminants. Here's another little stain, a couple of them. And so it can have more oxidation, it can have more tanning. The other side of that stain. Good paper quality though, not brittle at all, inks look nice. Overall, the structure of this book is quite good, although it has some obvious defects that keep the grade from being super high. It's a book that I think anybody would be happy to own, and it's a solid book. Here's a stain from a rusty staple, and also a foreign substance. I will typically do this on my first pass, even though this is technically my assessment and I'm not working, quote unquote, on the book right now. If I see obvious accretions or foreign substances, I will typically remove them at this point. So here are a couple that are coming out of the book right now. Who knows what they started life as or how long they've been there, but they're gone now, or they will be very soon. With those out of the way, we'll continue our assessment. Again, a moment to enjoy this Jack Kirby art. Very solid book. There is that rust stain around the bottom staple. This goes through, I guess, the middle 5 or 6 wraps. Oh, maybe it's only the middle 2 wraps, because here's the centerfold already. We have rust at this staple and rust migration into the paper. Now, rust migration in paper is very difficult to remove. It can be removed, but the typical chemicals that you would use also destroy the ink. So generally, it's not something we can do a lot about. In white areas, occasionally you can lessen it. Here's an ad for Strange Tales Annual #1, which is kind of great. There's that rust migration stain, and then another little foreign substance. This one is stuck on the paper a little bit. I've got to scrape it off, but it comes off. There's another foreign body of some sort. We'll get rid of those. Again, even though this is my assessment, stuff like that, I'd rather just remove now than maybe I'd forget it or miss it later. I'd rather just get it out of the way. Again, you'll see paper quality is good. Inks are good. I'm not sure what Grog Grow's own tail is. Some kind of a plant, I think. There's the rust migration in the bottom staple. An ad for Fantastic Four Annual #1, I believe. A little bit of rust migration in this wrap. Wonderful book, Avengers #1. Here's a crinkle on the last 4 or 5 wraps on the upper right corner. We'll just note that because it may take more than one press, or it may take some humidity to get that crinkle out. It's in the interior pages, but it is something we should be able to get decreased, and we'll see if it's color breaking on the back cover or not, but certainly we can decrease the impact of that on those interior pages so it's gone from those. Here's another little foreign substance inside the book. I'm going to just get that out of the way. And then we're going to do our assessment of this interior of the back cover. There's that crinkle. In this back cover, you can see a lot of the wear and tear that this comic. So these are water stains. You see here are water stains with tide marks. And you can see some bleed through of red. This is from the banner on the ad on the back. You see the tanning is worse along the bottom, and here's another water stain. Here's some ink smear, another tide mark from a water stain. Tide marks, sometimes you can't completely remove. They're odd in that even though they're created by water, you would think then water would be able to get them out. Here's the worst flaw, but it doesn't always work that way. So here's a rip. It's almost an inch long, and it's the most significant flaw really that the book has. There is one tiny hole punched through the page that I'll point out later. But here's our color assessment. So darker than off-white, but not quite tan. So CGC has a designation between off-white and tan called cream. So this would be cream along the bottom edge. Along the top edge, might still be cream. It's close to off-white though. We should be able to lighten this page top to bottom. There's that little hole through the cover. Not a real significant thing holding the book back. The rip on the back cover here is, though. I've already talked to the owner about it, and we're going to do a full conservation on this book, so we're going to go ahead and mend that rip. We'll do a tear seal. Here's another water stain, water stain, water stains. So our aqueous bath should be able to decrease these stains. Maybe we'll get lucky and it'll remove them. I'm not sure what this is. That may be something, we're going to try to dry clean that. The aqueous bath will certainly decrease those stains. Whether or not it'll completely remove the tide marks, we'll have to see. This is a Silver Age book, so it's much more fragile than a Golden Age book. And if you've watch my recent video on a Silver Age aqueous bath, it does not tolerate an aqueous bath nearly as well as Golden Age. So we may be stuck with those tide marks, but we can decrease them. Here I've changed the lighting, and I'm just going to look with incident light, or what CGC calls raking light, to look at the cover gloss. And the gloss generally is pretty good, but you'll note there's actually a loss of gloss in several locations from these water stains. Where water sits on a book for a really long time, you'll actually lose the gloss, and you can see it right there. It shows up just above girls on the cover, on the back cover, I should say. And there are other locations on the book where you have a loss of gloss. We certainly don't want to accelerate this. You can see a lot of sort of crinkles, a waviness, cockling back here. We should be able to address, certainly decrease that. There's another loss of gloss on that bottom right corner of the back cover. So there's nothing we can do about that. I shouldn't say that. We could attempt to re-gloss the cover, but I think that's beyond what we're going to try to do with this book, and I don't think it's going to affect the overall grade. Overall, a nice book with solid bones that any Marvelite would be proud to own. After thorough inspection, I estimate this book at a solid 3.5 or thereabouts, plus or minus maybe a half point, based on the creases, abrasions, stains, tide marks, ink bleed, tanning, the rip on the back cover, the rusty staples, and the rust migration into a few wraps on the bottom staple. Based on my assessment of the defects and discussion with the owner, I've developed the following project plan. First step is the assessment we just completed. The second step will be a dry clean. We've actually already removed some detritus from the book as we did our assessment, and it's not particularly soiled, so we'll complete a very mild dry clean. Then I'll need to disassemble the book so that we can do an aqueous wash on the cover, to deacidify the paper and address the tanning and stains and the tide marks. With the cover still damp, I'll perform a tear seal with Japanese paper and wheat paste using the same archival methods employed by museum curators on important pieces of art or historical documents. After mending, the cover will be dried in cold press. While the cover is in the cold press, I'll address the rusty staples before replacing them in the wraps and refolding the cover over the wraps and giving the book a good heat press so it presents beautifully as befits such a landmark issue. That's it for this first episode. Next episode, we'll get the real work underway. Thank you for joining me today. I sincerely appreciate you joining me as we kick off this new project together. If you enjoyed this video, please take a few seconds to give it a thumbs up and leave a comment, and please subscribe if you haven't already. Most of the materials I use for this conservation will be available from Amazon in the affiliate links below if you need any of them for your own conservation efforts. See you soon with episode 2, and until next time, take care of one another.